In a small Igbo village, there was an old warning that every child heard while growing up. When the sun goes down, do not whistle outside. Nobody questioned it. Nobody needed to. The elders simply said, night has its own owners. Let them have their silence. But 17-year-old Daniel thought the warning was nothing more than an old superstition. One evening, after helping his mother carry firewood home, Daniel sat outside their house, eating roasted corn. His friend Peter passed by. "Daniel, are you coming?" "Coming where?" "To the next compound. We are playing cards." Daniel laughed. "Wait for me." His mother looked up from the fire. "Daniel." "Yes, Mama?" "Come inside before it gets completely dark." "I will." She stared at him for a moment. "And don't whistle outside." Daniel smiled. "I know." But as his mother turned back to the fire, Daniel quietly shook his head. Everywhere he went, elders had the same warning. Do not whistle after dark. That night, after playing with Peter, Daniel walked home alone. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds. The village paths were unusually quiet. Daniel remembered his mother's warning. Then he heard a night bird somewhere in the distance. He smiled. Why are people afraid of everything? And without thinking, he whistled. One short whistle. Then another. The sound traveled through the darkness. Daniel stopped. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, a whistle answered from somewhere behind him. Daniel slowly turned. Nobody was there. He waited. Nothing. He laughed nervously. It must be another person. He continued walking. Then he heard it again. F-wheat. This time it sounded much closer. Daniel stopped walking. Peter? No answer. He looked behind him. The path was empty. Then something strange happened. From deep among the trees, another whistle sounded. But this one copied the exact tune Daniel had made. His smile disappeared. He started walking faster. The whistle followed. F-wheat. Daniel walked faster. F-wheat. He began to run. And just before he reached his house, he heard something that made his entire body freeze. A voice whispered his name from behind him. Daniel. He turned. There was nobody there. But on the dusty path behind him were two fresh footprints. They were pointing toward him. Not away from him. Daniel ran into the house and slammed the door. His mother rushed toward him. What happened? Daniel could barely speak. Mama, something followed me. She looked at him. What did you do? Daniel hesitated. Then he whispered. I whistled. His mother's face changed. She immediately closed the windows. Don't whistle again, she said. Daniel swallowed. Why? His mother looked toward the dark window. Because sometimes, she lowered her voice, something may whistle back. And outside the house, in the darkness, someone whistled again. Daniel did not sleep that night. He remained awake beside his mother while the small oil lamp burned between them. Neither of them spoke much. Every few minutes, they heard sounds outside. A branch moving, leaves rustling, a distant owl. Then silence. Just before midnight. F-wheat. Daniel looked at his mother. She raised one finger to her lips. Do not answer. The whistle came again. This time it sounded like Daniel's own whistle. His mother quietly stood up and shut the final window. At dawn, Daniel followed his mother to an elderly man who was respected by many people in the village. His name was Joseph. Joseph listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the old man sighed. "Your mother warned you?" "Yes." "And you ignored her?" Daniel lowered his head. "Yes." Joseph picked up his walking stick. "Long ago, our elders learned something important." "What?" "Night is not only for sleeping." Daniel frowned. Joseph continued. "During the day, people see one another. They know who is walking, who is calling, who is singing. But after dark, the forest becomes difficult to understand." He looked directly at Daniel. "That is why elders taught children not to call loudly into the darkness." Daniel asked, "Because of spirits?" Joseph shook his head slowly. "Whether you believe in spirits or not, there is wisdom in the warning." He paused. "Some things are better left unanswered." Daniel nodded. But Joseph wasn't finished. "Your first whistle may have been harmless." Daniel looked up. "But when something answered you?" The old man's voice became quieter. "You should have kept walking." Daniel felt cold. "What happens now?" Joseph looked toward the trees. "Do not whistle again." For several days, Daniel obeyed. He avoided walking alone at night. He stopped making jokes about the warning. But something bothered him. The whistle had stopped. And because it had stopped, Daniel began to believe the matter was over. Then one evening, Peter came to visit. "You still believe that strange story?" Daniel looked at him. "I don't know." Peter laughed. "You were frightened by your own shadow." Daniel frowned. "I heard something." Peter shook his head. "Let's go and see." "See what?" "The place where you heard the whistle." Daniel immediately refused. "No." Peter smiled. "You are afraid." Daniel hated being called afraid. So he followed. They walked toward the edge of the village as daylight faded. Peter laughed and talked loudly. Daniel remained silent. When they reached the trees, Peter said, "Go on, whistle." Daniel shook his head. "No." Peter whistled instead. "F-wheat." Nothing happened. Peter laughed. "See?" Then, "F-wheat." Something answered from deep inside the trees. Peter stopped laughing. They looked at each other. Another whistle came. But this time it was not Peter's tune. It was Daniel's, the same tune from several nights earlier. Peter's face went pale. "Let's go." They turned around. Then a voice came from behind the trees. "Peter." Peter froze. Daniel grabbed his arm. "Don't answer." The voice came again. "Peter." But it sounded exactly like Peter's mother. Peter whispered, "That sounds like my mother." Daniel shook his head. "No. Keep walking." They started moving. Then something stepped onto the path behind them. They did not see its face. Only a tall, dark shape standing between the trees. Peter suddenly ran. Daniel ran after him. Behind them came a soft whistle. Then another. And another. When they reached the first houses, the sound stopped. They turned around. The path was empty. Peter looked at Daniel. "We are never coming here again." Daniel nodded. But neither boy noticed something frightening. A few steps behind where they had been standing were fresh footprints in the dust. And they continued all the way toward the village. The next morning, Daniel told his mother everything. She immediately sent for Joseph. When Joseph arrived, he listened carefully. Then he asked, "Did either of you answer the voice?" "No," Daniel said. "Good." Joseph looked relieved. "But there is one more thing." Daniel's heart sank. "What?" "Do not whistle tonight." Daniel nodded. Joseph looked toward the darkening sky. Sometimes fear becomes stronger when people feed it with curiosity. Daniel understood. For the first time, he realized the old warning had never been about frightening children. It had been about teaching them to respect what they did not understand. That evening, Daniel stayed indoors. The village became quiet. Cooking fires disappeared one by one. Doors closed. Children went to sleep. Then the wind began to blow. Daniel sat beside his mother. Neither spoke. Suddenly, F-weed. Daniel looked toward the window. His mother remained still. Another whistle came. F-weed. Daniel whispered, "It is back." His mother shook her head. "Don't answer." The whistle came a third time. Then a voice whispered from outside, "Daniel." His heart began pounding. The voice sounded like Peter. "Daniel, come outside." Daniel stood. His mother grabbed his arm. "No." The voice came again. "Daniel." This time it sounded like his mother's voice. Daniel looked at her. She was standing right beside him. Neither of them moved. Then came another voice. His father's voice. A voice Daniel had not heard for years. "Daniel." He froze. His mother saw his face. "Don't listen." Daniel's eyes filled with fear. The voice called again. But this time it did not come from the window. It came from behind the house. His mother quickly took Daniel's hand. They remained silent until the first light of dawn appeared. When morning finally came, the sounds disappeared. Joseph returned. Daniel told him what happened. The old man nodded. "Now you understand why the elders warned against whistling after dark." Daniel looked down. "Yes." Joseph smiled gently. "The whistle itself is not the enemy." Daniel looked up. "Then what is?" "Sometimes," Joseph said, "the danger begins when you call into darkness without knowing what may answer." From that day, Daniel never whistled outside after sunset. Years pass. He grew older. He eventually became one of the people who taught younger children the old warning. One evening, a little boy asked him, "Uncle Daniel, is it true that something answers when you whistle at night?" Daniel looked toward the dark forest. Then he smiled. "Maybe." The boy laughed. "But you don't know?" Daniel shook his head. "No." "Then why should I believe you?" Daniel leaned closer. "Because wisdom does not always begin with knowing everything." The boy became quiet. Daniel continued, "Sometimes wisdom begins with knowing when to stop." The boy nodded. That night, as the children went home, Daniel stood outside for a moment. The village was silent. A cool wind passed through the trees. He listened. Nothing. Then from somewhere far beyond the houses, F-weed. Daniel slowly looked toward the darkness. He did not answer. He simply turned around and walked inside. And that is why, even today, elders still warn children. Do not whistle after dark. Not every old warning is meant to frighten you. Some warnings are born from experiences people would rather you never have to repeat.